5 years had passed, and a lot had happened in that time. Dan and Melissa now had 2 children and were a solid family. Their oldest daughter, Isla, was in reception, and it was about to be her first ever sports day. They grow up so fast. Dan was excited for his daughter's first ever sports day, but when it came to social events, there was now a void that was no longer there. Dan's greatest fear had been realized. His wife had discovered high-waisted pants, and Melissa's seemingly endless butt-crack displays were no longer endless. In fact, they were no longer a thing. Dan hadn't seen Melissa's ass crack hanging out for 4 years. The last sighting being when they put Isla's first bed together, and Melissa decided that there was going to be a half moon that night. Since then, he had received nada, zilch, nil. Dan was getting frustrated that his wife's crack was no longer a feasible treat and had decided to come up with a plan. As Melissa laid out her clothes to attend sports day, Dan had noticed that she took out a pair of high-waisted black jeans. As she went to go and take a shower, Dan knew that he only had one shot to make this plan work. He had found a pair of Melissa's old mid-rise black jeans and devised a plan to swap them out whilst she wasn't looking. Her taking a shower was that perfect opportunity. He knew that there was a very high chance that Melissa would take one look at them and instantly notice, but it was worth a shot. After she got out of the shower, got all dried off, and headed to put her clothes on, she raised a slight suspicion about the pants. "Are these the jeans I put out?" she said to herself. She put them on, but paused for a second, making a face to suggest that something was a little off about them. They're fine, she contemplated, as she kept them on and headed downstairs. Dan's plan was truly in action. The family got ready to go, and Dan smiled approvingly as he noticed that Melissa hadn't realized about the jeans switch. They rounded up the kids and headed to the car to set off. Before they got in, Isla dropped her water bottle on the ground, and Melissa bent down to pick it up for her. Dan's heart raced as he rushed around to get behind her, hoping that there would be an amazing view waiting for him. Dan stood behind his beautiful wife, in awe, because for the first time in 4 years, Melissa's butt crack was showing. "There we go, sweetie," Melissa said as she returned the bottle into Isla's hands. "There we go indeed," Dan thought to himself as his dick hardened by the second. A hint of spunk even seeping out at the thought of what he just saw. They made it to sports day well in time, and Isla went off with her class to get ready. Dan and Melissa made their way over to the shaded area with their youngest daughter, Frankie, the area where parents were able to spectate the races. Melissa sat on the grass with Frankie on her lap. Dan sat down beside her, but slightly behind her so that he could keep tabs on Melissa's crack situation. Frankie kept trying to wriggle out of Melissa's arms, and when she would do so, Melissa would have to reach over to pull her back in. Every time she did so, Dan was treated to a solid 3 inches of butt crack. Melissa's pants started to slip every time she did this, and it got to the point where her crack was showing as she sat anyway. Other parents had started to notice too, with some moms pointing and laughing, whilst the dads admired the view. Melissa remained oblivious to her butt crack comeback and remained focused on supporting Isla, who was about to start her race. As Isla ran down the track, Melissa would bob up and down as she sat, which made her butt even more visible, not just to her gawping husband, but every parent behind her. Dan was so focused on his wife's ass that he missed the entirety of Isla's race. "Well done, sweetie," Melissa bellowed with pride. "Nice one, honey," echoed Dan. He turned to Melissa. "Where did she finish again?" Melissa's face was a mixture of surprise and disappointment. "How do you not know where she finished? You were literally just watching it." Yeah, I was," Dan responded in a distracted manner. "I just, forgot. There were a lot of kids close together." Melissa became suspicious before noticing a breeze that she hadn't felt for a while. She reached down the back of her pants, ran her hands down the top of her crack, and realized that her ass was on display to the entire field. "Have you been staring at my butt crack the whole time?" she asked angrily. Dan paused, trying to think of an answer. "You have, haven't you? Instead of coming here to support our child, you're more focused on staring at my ass crack." Thanks for letting me expose myself to the entire school, by the way. Melissa was furious, and Dan knew there was no way out. These are high-waisted anyway. How are they hanging that low? She queried. I kinda switched them when you weren't looking. Dan knew that he had just sealed his own fate. You did what? Melissa was seething with rage. I like seeing your butt crack, and I hadn't seen it for ages. I wanted to treat myself to a nice view. Is that so bad? Well then, ask me to do that in private, not in front of our daughter's school. Hundreds of people have just seen my ass because you wanted a little treat. You have completely embarrassed me. You are a fucking asshole. Melissa stood up, 4 inches still on display, might I add, before she pulled up her pants and walked away. Asshole! She shouted again. The only asshole I can see is the one hanging out of your pants, Dan retorted. Too soon? Melissa stormed over to find one of her best friends to complain about Dan. Ironically, she chose to do this sitting down with her butt crack showing yet again. The crowd of horny dads had noticed Melissa's movements, and her new position saw a cult-like following of hungry butt crack enthusiasts camped behind her. Some just stared, some took photos. One guy even had to put his hands in his pocket and manually pull his boner to the side. Melissa was an A-list celebrity. The A standing for ass crack. After a conversation with her friend, she had decided to accept that everybody had already seen it and thought, might as well give them a show, and for the next hour, that's exactly what she did. Every single parent within a 20-meter radius was exposed to 4 inches of beautiful, gorgeous butt crack. I'm charging you all for a premium subscription next time, Melissa joked to the crowd as he managed to take control of the situation with humor. Even some of the male teachers had made their way over to take a peek. Ela sat there proudly after her race, with absolutely no idea that her mom had become famous to all of her friends' parents. As for Dan, he still had to sleep on the couch that night. But luckily, one of his friends had sent him a picture of Melissa mooning absolutely everybody, and he was able to drift off to sleep with the help of Mrs. Palm and her 5 daughters. Sadly for him, though, as a punishment, Melissa threw out all of her mid-rise jeans, and Dan's seemingly genius plan had suffered some lethal consequences.